contest set for one fall. It is for the WWE Championship.
Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Special interview time for Around the Turnbuckle. I'm the Big Albowski. Next to me is my co-host, Professor Keith.
Hello.
As always, and with us today is the one and only Carolina Jim. What's up, Jim?
Hey, how are you?
Excellent. We are excellent, sir. And first and foremost, this is a long time coming. You know, I've been wanting to interview you for a while. It's just been trying to core our schedules, and then of course we had Dog Nation right here in Q-Mart, right here in Quakertown. And Jim's getting ready for a show, and he ring announces each and every 3WA show, and he does a fantastic job. But first and foremost, I want you to tell people the story of how you got into wrestling in the first place. Back when you were a kid, or however that took place.
Well, I became a wrestling fan back in 1983, Georgia Championship Wrestling. At the time, living in the Philly suburbs, we didn't have cable. We didn't have capabilities for cable yet. Cable was kind of in its infancy. But my mom and myself would go down, my aunt and uncles down in South Jersey almost every weekend, and they had cable down there. And for some reason, we didn't go down for one weekend, and then the next weekend we go down. My uncle's like, you have to see this. And I guess the week before, was flipping through the channels. He caught Georgia Championship Wrestling, and I just got hooked on that. I mean, it was when the Legion of Doom, there was the Road Warriors, Paul Ellering, Ted DiBiase, Jake the Snake, Brad Armstrong.
Quite a lineup.
So it was like the heyday of Georgia Championship Wrestling, and that got me hooked. And I became a fan, ever since that day.
So fast forward to you got older and you started to, you mentioned pre-show, you started to drive yourself to indie shows then and get more into the indie shows.
Yeah, around 1990, when I got my driver's license, I started going to indie shows. And a couple of years after that, ECW started, the original ECW. And I went to all those shows, and I became friends with my best friend Gary Walter, and he was good friends with Ed Zahn, who was the promoter at the time for ECW. So we got to on a lot of the spot shows like the Flagstaff, Hamburg, Downingtown, all those shows. We helped set up the building and things like that. And at the time, Ed Zahn was running independent promotion in the Pennsylvania area. And another buddy of mine, Mike Burns, started Smart Mark Video, and we started taping shows. So I did some commentating on some of those shows, and the Smart Mark Video crew started the Future Wrestling Alliance, FWA, up in Palo Alto, Pennsylvania, and they needed a ring announcer. The ring announcer they weren't happy with, so I'd never done it, never thought about ring announcing, and they asked me, would I like to try it. So my first show was April 15th, 2000. The main event was Lightning Mike Quackenbush against El Hijo del Santo from Mexico.
Both those names.
Wow, yeah. And I think Homicide, Low Key were on the show. But that's where I got started, And at the time, we were taping shows for Bad Crew. They used to be in ECW.
Yeah.
So I started ring announcing for them. Dirty Deeds, Darren Wise had a promotion out in Red Lion, Pennsylvania. I started working there, and things just kind of went from there. Quackenbush brought me into Chikara. I think the first Chikara show I ring announced was like their third show ever. It was Reckless Youth against the original La Parka. Wow, and that was in Allentown at Bud Carson's old place. So that from there, I just kind of took off, the ring announcement. Like I said, I never thought about ring announcing. I enjoyed doing the commentating, But then once I got in the ring to do the ring announcement, commentating was like second,
You got hooked.
Yeah.
All right, so now
just real quick.
Yeah.
I mean, in a defensive way, you've almost kind of like Forrest Gump your way through like late '90s, early 2000s history. I mean, we're talking about ring announcing and being on shows with guys that are going to be in either regular Hall of Fames, the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fames, Independent Hall of Fames.
Yeah, I mean, it would make your. I mean, I keep a list of all the like the quote unquote names that I've ring announced shows with, and like I ring announced the show that Lex Luger wrestled on, Rick Steiner, New Age Outlaws. I mean, I've done at the ECW Arena, which I consider one of the top buildings in the country, if not the world. I think I've ring announced 4 different promotions there. Hamburg Fieldhouse, I've done a bunch of shows. So, I mean, I'm always going to be a mark. I think Batista's the only person in wrestling that's not a mark in some shape or form.
Right.
I mean, everybody has some sort of mark in them.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, I mean, the guys that I grew up watching and then to share a locker room with or share a ring with, it's been amazing.
So nowadays, it seems like you're announcing on average, I mean, from what I've seen on your social media, like what, 3 or 4 shows a month?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of slowed down. The pandemic slowed some things down. Right now, there's maybe 4 or 5 regular promotions that I work for. Now, some of them, like Dino does monthly, but then there's some that maybe only do a couple shows.
Right.
I know Twisted Tate, his ACW, he hasn't been running since the pandemic, and I mean, he used to run at least a couple times a month. Ray Torres and Ready Regional Championship Wrestling, I do. I go out to Malcolm King's promotion for Seven Mountains.
Seven Mountains.
But I don't really, not that I've ever really put myself out there. Pretty much, like, if somebody wants to use me, they'll contact me. I don't go on social media and like, I have this date open. Please book me. But I mean, I'm happy just doing a couple shows, a month. Somebody interested in using me, I'm available. Great, but I don't work as much as I used to. But when I first started, there wasn't nearly the amount of ring announcers that there are now. I mean, it seems like everybody and their brother and their sister is a ring announcer. But yeah, I mean, I'm happy just doing a couple shows a month.
So another hobby that I see that you do often is you attend a lot of conventions.
Yes.
and also autograph signings. Name some of the wrestlers you've met, and maybe you got a couple stories about certain guys or girls that you've met.
Like Ric Flair. I mean, most of the people from the '80s I've gotten to meet one way or another. I know back in the day when they had the TV tapings, like in Philly and stuff, I used to go back to the hotel afterwards, like when they had WCW Nitro or Raw and the different TV tapings, and used to get a lot of autographs and stuff. One of the nicest people I ever met was Dustin Rhodes.
Cool.
It was after one of the TV tapings, and ECW was just starting. And there was a tape-in Philly, so we went back to the hotel. I forget which hotel it was at the time, the Hilton or something. And I was out in the lobby area, and then there's a bar. And he comes out of the bar, and I asked him for his autograph and stuff. And the guy, he's like, "How come you're not hanging out in the bar?" I'm like, a lot of wrestlers won't sign stuff in there, like, So he's like, "No, you come in with me." And he's like, if anybody gives you a hard time, you tell them, and I'll have them sign whatever you want. So him and the McGee brothers, two people know from ECW fans, and Bob McGee has his own website, Pro Wrestling Between the Sheets.
Yep.
We hung out with Dustin, and we're talking like ECW, because I guess he was good friends with Paul Heyman from the WCW years. So he was just like asking us all about how ECW was doing, because it was just starting to take off. It was like in the Philly market, and I think New York was just getting it. So we spent the whole night sitting at the bar. I don't drink, but buying me sodas and buying them drinks all night. So he was like one of the nicest people. And I always remember that night. I know he's had his ups and downs, but I always have a lot of respect for him.
I grew up in Phillipsburg, New Jersey,
Okay.
and my neighbor was a security guard for ECW.
Okay.
He's on all the ECW pay-per-views. You see him. We all called him Big Joe. I don't know if you know who that is, but he was like a big dude with like long wavy hair. But he was at every ECW show, and then he would come back like after he would do a show and tell me what happened. Tell me like, oh my God, you just seen a new Jack did this and blah, 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 and whatever. So that kind of got me into ECW in the first place because I only was really strictly WWF.
Okay.
But I would venture into like WCW a little bit when I was a kid. But like ECW, and then I did make it to ECW Arena one time with my cousin. It wasn't a pay-per-view. It was just a regular show that they were doing. But I saw Rob Van Dam versus Taz, I think it was, if I remember right. But anyway,
I only missed one. I don't think many people can say that, workers or fans. I only missed one ECW show ever.
Really?
And that was like towards the end. There was the FWA we were doing a show, and I think with the main event for the ECW show was like Rob Van Dam and Skull Von Crush. It was kind of towards the end where checks were bouncing, and it was like what wrestlers are going to show up.
Right.
All that rest of the card wasn't really that good, but I mean, I could write a book on some of this like behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, you
could. We used to hang out at the bar at the hotel and hang out with the workers. Would hang out in our booth. And I mean, it was like it was amazing. It's never going to be another time like that.
Right.
Just the whole atmosphere between the fans and the wrestlers. It was like we're all like
they were a bloodthirsty crowd down there in Philly. Like they loved ECW so much.
But they were loyal. I remember the first time I fought ECW, I was channel surfing. Well, no, actually, I wasn't channel surfing. I didn't stay up that late at that point. I had friends who would tell me stories. Unfortunately, they were telling me, the bullshit stuff would get out. Like, oh, this guy got killed, this guy, this, that, and other thing. Shit that just wouldn't happen. Like, oh, this guy 911 did this crazy stuff. So I'm like, I'm car accident curious. I'm like, well, let me see if this is really as insane as they are. So I set up 95. I set up on the VCR. I set up the tape, put it on the channel that roughly it's supposed to be on. I ran it for like an hour or so before it was supposed to come on. And it happened in me and Blanco Guerrero.
Ooh, there you go.
Their last match, the 2 out of 3 balls match. And I'm like, this is great. This is nothing like what I was told it is. I love that kind of technical wrestling stuff. So I was
that weekend they did like I think they did 3 matches. Like I went to all 3 shows. They did like 2 shows. They did like a Friday night and 2 Saturdays. I think Flagstaff was doing a day, and then there was somewhere right outside of Philly that night, and they did a Friday. And that weekend was just amazing. Like even like Eddie's last night in the arena, and Chris Benoit's last night when he came, and the Dudleys when they left the first time. It was just some of the moments are just.
Oh yeah, they'll never, like you said, they'll never be again. That time, that era when it was like WCW, ECW, WWF, like all at the same time. It was the most glorious time in wrestling. The late '90s, early 2000s. So after that happened, after 2001 happened, it seems like, and Keith and I agree on this, and not everybody agrees with us, that wrestling's taken a turn since then. Like when there was competition, when there was WCW and ECW and WWE, when WWE bought WCW and WWE, or ECW, things kind of changed. Do you feel that way about pro wrestling since then? Because you've been a fan of it before that and since.
Well, I don't think it's ever been the same since the territory days. I mean, that was when Vince started buying up all the. It was great in one way in that wrestling, I think, reached heights that it never had, but at the same time, there wasn't much competition. And then Ted Turner Crockett's tried, and then Ted Turner got involved, and I know TNA tried with Jarrett and stuff, but I mean, I don't think today's wrestling is nearly as good as it was. I think one of the problems is a lot of today. Everything is like with the reality TV shows. They try to make everything seem real. Like back then, it was like you could feud with half the Russians were the bad guys, right? The Iranians were bad, and just to me it was fun. Just being in that for an hour, 2 hours, just being
Boss.
like a
Yeah.
soap opera.
Yep.
Almost. But now it's like they try to do. I don't know. They just try to be more reality. Like they
Right.
think like fans are too smart
Right.
to go back to that time. But I think it just takes away from the whole building up of a match.
I totally agree. They've kind of scrapped that idea, and that kayfabe is no longer really a thing, and so they think that the fans want to know what's behind the curtain, but to be honest with you, we don't. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of us that don't, and they just don't get that. But what do you think of AEW so far? I mean, have you checked out AEW?
Yeah, I mean, there's actually quite a few people that work for AEW that I work shows with, or kind of some, quote unquote friends with in the business. The Joey Janela's and the Bryce Remsburg and Paul Turner. So I mean, I like watching, just seeing the people that I either did shows with or I knew from when they were just starting out. I mean, I think they're doing well. I mean, I don't know. I know that Khan is a multi-billionaire.
Right.
But it's like you would think eventually they're going to need to start. They have so many people in their talent
Right.
that under contract that they're going to need to maybe start doing house shows or do something to,
Right.
earn
that money.
I don't care how much money you have.
Right.
Eventually, you might get to the point where it's like, I'm not throwing. I know they lost millions of dollars last year. And
Yeah.
it's like, how long can they just keep? But I mean, right now with having Bryan Danielson,
CM Punk,
and Moxley and Punk, and who knows if Cesaro, Claudio's
Right.
going to go, and I guess Jeff Hardy's supposed to be coming. So
Yeah,
Well,
Jeff
Jeff's
Hardy
already kind of
said.
Yeah.
Jeff Hardy said, I think 3 days ago, he did an interview, and he flat out said, "I'm coming to AEW."
yeah. So I mean, if they do
once
it,
it's done, he is off.
if they do everything right, I mean, they could blow WWE out of the water when it comes to like match
I want them
quality.
to succeed because I want there to be a place for people who love this business, who want to make a living doing
Yeah.
it and get signed, to not have to crawl to WWE and kind of like hope they get signed at NXT or something.
Yeah.
And frankly, WWE can't sign everybody. One
Right.
promotion can't sign everybody.
Plus they cut.
And now
How
it
many
seems like NXT, they don't want like indie guys. They want
No.
people that they can
Right.
mold,
Right.
whether it be, athletes coming out of college or, somebody that's a model that doesn't really have much wrestling, if any wrestling background.
I really like Keith Lee. Like Keith Lee signing Keith Lee, because I when Keith Lee was released by WWE, I was like, oh, I hope he goes there, because I know he's young and he's got a lot of wrestling left in him. And to see who they put him up against, it's going to be fun. But I just want AEW. Like, there's things about AEW I don't like, but the good outweighs the bad to me. And I used to not be able to miss a Monday Night Raw. I couldn't tell you the last time I watched a Monday Night Raw or SmackDown. And now I find myself Wednesday, I'm tuning into AEW because I want to see what's going on there.
Well, I know, like NXT, I flipped through the channels a couple weeks ago, and I put it on, and I watched it almost like background, but it was like unwatchable.
Yeah.
Like some of the characters were just like, they have some girl who like sleeps all the time or something, like wears pajamas, or like it was just like it was just weird.
We have mutual friends who were complaining.
Somehow snuck back into wrestling.
Yeah, but
is getting these things through.
We have mutual friends who I won't name complaining on Facebook about that they spent money to go to Hershey, and because SmackDown was in Hershey last night, and they were complaining that they wasted money to go. That's how upset they were about what they offered for SmackDown. They were rather upset by it, but anyway, so back to the ring announcing thing. You mentioned a couple of guys before we went on live. You mentioned a couple of guys that influenced you, but one guy in particular that you mentioned was Howard Finkel. Tell us about him and how you felt he impacted the business. Because to me, he ring announced like some of the biggest matches of all time, right? I mean,
it's like, I know it's sometimes WWE or WWF try to make him into like a character, but I mean, he was always one of those guys that he just put the talent over, which I think is the number one. I mean, that's what I try to do. I mean, I see ring announcers out there now that they try to put themselves over, I think, more than the talent of the company.
Yeah.
And he was just like straightforward, and you know, he wasn't all bells and whistles. He just went out there and, you know, he just announced the guys, put the guys over, and he was just, to me, he was just the best of all, I think, of all time.
His Hall of Fame speech, I remember him saying that all I tried to do was announce every match like it was the main event.
Yep.
And I that resonated with me because I used to love him. His voice. Like, he was the voice of WWE. And when I was a kid and I'd buy a house show ticket, sometimes he wasn't there. Sometimes they would send somebody else, and then I'd be disappointed it wasn't him. But once in a while, I would get him.
Yeah.
And when he came out and he would say, you know, "Good evening," you know, it would just give me chills just hearing Howard Finkel say "Good evening, Bethlehem" when I'd go to Stabler Arena or something. So yeah, Howard Finkel, that's a heck of a.
I got to meet him a couple times.
Really?
Yeah, conventions and stuff. So.
Did you talk to him? I mean, were you ring announcing at the time?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned, you know, just like I'm a ring announcer too, and, you know, wish me luck and stuff. But I mean, he's just, to me, he's far above everybody. I actually went to the same high school as Michael Buffer went to the same high school.
Oh, neat.
I guess if you want to, or I went to his high school. I don't know. But
interesting.
I used to run into him sometimes because his family he used to still have family where I used to live, and I guess he would come back sometimes to visit. And I would run into him like at the Wawa or the Rite Aid. I'm like, yeah, there's Michael Buffer. But this was before like cell phones and be able to get pictures and
right.
selfies and stuff. But yeah, like I said, I like you know, some of the other. I know you mentioned the guy that's with AEW. I think you mentioned
Justin Roberts.
Yeah, I like him a lot.
Yeah, he's always been pretty good.
And like in the indie scene now, there's Rich Palladino.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good friends with David Adams.
Yeah, David Adams is.
Him and me, like we've helped each other over the years. Like he's gotten me some bookings. I've gotten him bookings. Like whenever one of us was double booked or something, we helped the other one get, take the spot.
Well, you both were at the Legends of Hamburg thing in July, so that's where I met him because I had met you a few times, but I saw you there, and then he came up and he talked to us because we had a table there, and he seemed like really down to earth guy, but like when he did the ring announcing part, like you could see like he's really good at it. He's really good at it. Not saying you're not, because you are, but I'm saying like there's a lot of guys, like you said, there's a lot more ring announcers than I thought. Like I really thought there was, like in this area, I thought there was like maybe 3 or 4 of you. There's a lot more, but like we have been doing this now for almost 2 years, and you're our first ring announcer because locally, like Keith and I don't know, how far is it for you? To drive home to here? Yeah, we're about an hour away from here, where everywhere else is a little bit longer. So this is, if we want to see local wrestling, we come here. Now Allentown, I'm closer to Allentown, but WXW, like their shows are few and far between lately. Like they don't do monthly shows. They kind of do like one here, one there, one here, one there. They're more about the training.
Yep.
So I would go to WXW. I used to go to WXW shows when I was a kid, but because I have friends that actually competed in WXW, but and he has a buddy who's a referee for WXW, but
I used to work a lot of, but Sam moved down towards Philly, so he's been doing more like autograph signings,
right?
And then they had their school up in Allentown, and then the building, they lost the building, so they're trying to I guess they're working, I think, with Combat Zone down in there.
Right.
They're looking to work with Combat Zone down at their school in Jersey.
Right.
But they don't run up here as much. I know he runs Bloomsburg a couple times a year, but I used to do all the Allentown shows. But he hasn't been doing that for a couple years now.
Right. So but coming down here to these shows, like my first show here for Dino Santa was the 40th anniversary outdoor show. That was the first time I was here. So that was the first time I saw you. in the ring, and I thought, because I had been to other indie shows where, quite frankly, the ring announcer sucked. You know what I mean? I was like, wow, where'd they get this guy? Or like, there was a last minute thing where they needed to throw like their kid in the ring and let him do it. And then when you came out there, you seemed like very, to me, like from the beginning, very professional. Like you've been doing this forever, and I think that and tell me if I'm wrong. I think if they let you, you will do this forever.
Yeah, I mean, as long as I'm able to get in and out of the ring, I'm gonna, that's one thing that ring announcer, like with I guess some wrestlers last until they're real old, but at least I don't have to worry about taking bumps and stuff.
So I think
you mentioned about the one thing I do want to say though is
what everyone's.
I think and I go to a lot of shows, but to me the worst thing is going to an independent show if either the sound system is horrible or the ring announcer is horrible.
Right.
To me, it takes
away from it.
It does take away. You're like, who's that guy? Like,
right.
What was his name?
Right.
And so I mean, I know some promoters they I think they know that the ring announcer and the sound is important, but then there's others that I think they just think like, hey, I'll just get somebody that'll do it for free, or I'll just go to Walmart, buy speakers, and that'll be my sound system. They don't take the time to, but I think it does take away from the
professionalism. It's called professional wrestling. It should be a professional show.
I mean, not just professionalism, but I liken it to because I always say about referees too. A great referee, just like a great ring announcer. You don't consciously notice what they're doing, but if they can't do it well, boy, do you notice.
And you'll know if they mess up, like they're counting three, and the guy's shoulder was up.
Yes.
Or whether it was supposed to happen or not, you can tell when they make mistakes.
So piggybacking off that, have there been you have any stories of some moments where you either announced the wrong guy or screwed up somebody's name or something like that, where where it was kind of a funny moment, like not funny, haha, everybody's laughing at you, but funny, like, oh my god, I can't believe I just fucking did that.
Yeah, nothing stands out. I mean, I have made mistakes. I mean, nothing stands out in particular though, but I know there's been times when I've totally screwed up the name. Or I know there was one show, I think it was NWS in Jersey, Joe Panzerino, and it was I think they were doing the Jersey J Cup at the time, and on one of the matches I announced the guy as the winner and the new champ or something, and I was like totally like, dude, it wasn't the whole fit. Yeah, the guy lost or something. I'm making this big whole new champion, and he's like looking at me funny. And I'm like, why are you looking at me funny? And here was, but yeah, I mean, we all make a lot of times, and there's times when after the show I'll like beat myself up on stuff that people probably don't even realize like I made a mistake, but I know that I did, because I try to because I'm a perfectionist, so I try not to make any mistakes.
Right.
But yeah, it does.
Keith, have you ever noticed to make a mistake since we've been coming down here?
I know the one show I hear. One thing I do remember is I called somebody. I said somebody was with the Brick House Club or something.
Yeah, I do think I was there. For
or
that
it was
no. What it was at the last show, Brick House himself was like, "There is no Brick House Club," because you're like representing the Brick House Club. There is no Brick House Club. So
there was a show though where I announced somebody as either being part of the Brick House Club or part of the first family or something. I think it was something with Brick House. He gave me a lot of crap over it, but it's Brick House.
It's Brick House, exactly. He's not going to watch this. You hear that, Jabroni? You're not going to watch this. No, I'm kidding. But anyway.
Upset? No, I've never done that.
I upset him earlier today. I upset him all the time. But anyway.
We all have.
We upset him. Exactly. It is what it is. It is what it is. So like moving forward, realistic, like I said you would do this forever, like you said, as long as you can get in and out of the ring.
Yeah.
But like, you love wrestling. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. You love wrestling. It's like part of your life. It's a major part of your life.
It's not like, to be honest, I'm not as into it like I used to be years ago. Mm-hmm. But as I've gotten older, but I mean, it's still what they always say. Once it's in your blood, like there's nobody ever really retires from wrestling. Like they can say they're going to retire, but it's like it's hard. It's almost like the
Mafia.
It's hard to just like get out of it. I mean, once you're in it, you're in it. So yeah, as long as somebody still wants to use me, I don't see me ever, as long as my health holds up, or I don't see me stopping anytime soon. I mean, this is my 22nd year, so
It's
I'm a
awesome.
ring announcer.
Congratulations, that's awesome. So I got another question. We ask wrestlers when we have them on if they could book themselves in a dream match, what would that be? If Carolina Jim could be standing on any stage and announce any match, like what would that be?
The Road Warriors, that's one thing that I never had a chance to do, was announce the Road Warriors.
Right.
I came close a couple times, but ended up, like, I knew people that were running shows with the Road Warriors, but ended up somebody else did the ring announcing. So, I mean, I would have loved to have done a show with the ring announced a show with the Road Warriors. For the longest time, Tommy Dreamer, like, he's one of my all-time favorites, and I've known Tommy's from the ECW days.
Mm-hmm.
And for the longest time, I didn't ring announce any shows with him. And then finally, a couple years ago, I had the opportunity to do it. I think I've done a couple since, but that was like one of my bucket list things, was to ring announce a show with Dreamer. I mean, I could say do one of those tuxedo matches with Howard Fink. I know there's one promotion that ran out in Lancaster. The ring announcer wanted to set something up, like, between him and me, because we were both doing the ring announce, and he wanted to set something up where we would fight each other. But I never really wanted to get into the physical.
Right.
I mean, like I said, I try to just put over the product. I try not to. I don't want to take. I don't want to be the person. Yeah, I don't want to be a character.
So, how do you follow? I mean, you get your wrestling fix nowadays from the shows you actually announce at, added on to wherever you go, like when you go to these conventions and stuff like that. Do you actually go to other promotions, like you actually buy tickets when they're in town, like per se, not necessarily WWE?
Besides the WWE, not to. I mean, I couldn't tell you the last time I bought it. Like, I have enough. I guess I've been around enough and know enough people that I can go to shows and not have to pay to get in. But I mean, with the Smart Mark Video, I used to do a lot of stuff with them. So I used to go to all the shows that they would do.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still stuff with the IWTV that, because Smart Mark's still part of that, is part of that now, that I go to hang out at shows. So, I mean, I still try to go to indie shows when I can. I know PPW, they now running up in the Poconos. They used to run down in Hazleton. I'm good friends with Paul Bowe, so if I'm not booked somewhere, I tell them, hey, I'm going to come hang out. So I try to go to some of their shows. But I mean, I follow stuff on social media.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't watch Raw or SmackDown on a regular basis.
Honestly, we don't.
Or any of that. I don't get years ago I used to get all the different the Wrestling Observer, different newsletters.
Right.
I don't do that anymore.
Well, that's what I have the professor for. He reads.
Yeah, it's
he reads. I can't read it.
You find so much stuff out.
He'll read the stuff and then he'll let me know what's going on, but I don't read. But anyway, I don't watch Raw. I don't watch SmackDown, and neither does he. But there's events that I just can't miss, and WrestleMania is one of them. But Royal Rumble, I can't miss the Royal Rumble. I just can't. I just love that concept. And he always reminds me all the time it was Pat Patterson's idea, and I know. But
history,
he is. He's a historian.
It's important to know the history.
There you go. There's a question for Carolina Jim. Do you have a collection besides your autographs? Because obviously you have a bunch of autographs. Do you have a wrestling collection of any?
Yeah,
of
I
any
have a lot of stuff from the ECW days. I have. I don't know how. I got quite a few pieces of Broken Table that are signed and autographed.
Nice.
That were used in matches, signed and autographed by Terry Funk, Public Enemy, Dreamer, Raven. Frying pans that still got the blood on it that were used and are autographed.
Nice.
There was a show. It was a steel cage match at the arena, and I forget who was in it, but 911 was handcuffed to the cage, and I got the handcuffs. And the funny thing was, the handcuffs broke before the match even started. So us at ringside knew what was going on, and he had to pretend that he was handcuffed a couple times. He would forget, and and like start going the other side. He'd run back, but yeah, when I got the handcuffs that he used, I had three match worn shirts. There was a cage match that the gangsters were in the arena. I got the shirt to Jack for the match. When Axelrod and Ian Rock did their best of three series with the glass and stuff, I got one of the shirts that Axel or Ian wore in one of the matches. I got Axel being decided, and I also have just incredible on the ECW type Dreamer. If you watch the video, Incredible comes to the ring and he throws his shirt up, takes his shirt off, throws it up in the air, and you see me grab it, catch it, stuff it down my shirt, my pants. So I got that shirt. Nice. But I never. I was always afraid. I was going to have Incredible sign it. I was afraid of something like nice. But yeah, I mean, I have like a ton of stuff, magazines and books and stuff that are autographs. But yeah, there's like I said, I think the ECW stuff is kind of like like I said, that's kind of stuff I sit ringside at all the shows, and most of the shows. Back then, you're able to just pick stuff up, like just to hang out with the guys after the shows. So it was easy to get sign stuff for you. You mentioned earlier you met like all those ECW guys, getting your autographs and stuff, and you got to know some of them. You also mentioned you met Dustin Rhodes, and you also mentioned that you met Ric Flair. Is there anybody you haven't mentioned yet that is notable, like that you'll never forget when you met that person? Brad Armstrong. I always liked, like I mentioned about the Georgia Championship Wrestling. I'll never forget, that first episode I watched. Tommy Rich at the time was doing the Mr. R gimmick. He had lost a Loser Beefs match, so he was like wrestling the basketball. Right. So I guess they did some sort of angle, like for DiBiase, like they said, like if DiBiase could prove he was under the mask, that he would be banned for life or something. So in the show I watched, the first show, DiBiase was working Mr. R, which was Brad Armstrong under the mask. And he takes the mask off, and there's Brad. He looks at Brad, and then the camera pans over to Gordon Soley, and there's Tommy Rich standing with Gordon Soley and David. But for some reason, I was always a fan of Brad Armstrong. So I got to meet him after like a night show or something. It's a heck of a wrestling family, too. If you remember when WCW did the pay-per-view in Maryland with the football players like Reggie White, Kevin Green. Yeah. I went to the show and we stayed that weekend at the hotel where the wrestlers were. And after the show, I got to meet Kevin Green. Cool. And he had just come to Carolina at the time. So I was wearing like a Curry Collins jersey. So I signed my Curry Collins, but I was meeting Kevin Green. Sure. Steve Austin, like he first came to ECW, he was cool. I told the story on a different podcast where it was one of the spot shows, and he came in to do an interview or something, and it was the week he had just gotten fired from WCW, and I was in the parking lot. He got to the building, and I asked him for his autograph. He's like, this is the first autograph that I've signed since I was fired from WCW. He's like, it feels so good to, be gone from that, from that help. Like I said, I've had the opportunity to meet quite a few different people, like, that I never thought, I never imagined I would ever get to meet or like I said, share a ring with. I know I mentioned my first live show I went to was at the Spectrum, and it was May 5th of 1984. Right. And I think there's like 7 or 8 people that worked on that show that I actually got to ring announce shows, like Valentine, Tito, Sabu, the Iron Sheik was on the show, right. And different guys I got to, later on got to work. I never would have thought I would ever, had that opportunity. So it's awesome.
Keith, you got any? I got one last question for him. So you got any questions you want to get at?
Yeah. So you had mentioned before we started, you were going to Dennis for Luzo shows and stuff. And Dennis is kind of legendary. I don't know if you have any Dennis Coralluzzo stories.
I mean, I got to see the good side of Dennis and the bad side. We actually, with Smart Mark Video, we did a shoot interview with Dennis. So we went to I guess he was separated or something at the time. He was living in an apartment in Woodbury, New Jersey, and we got to go to his apartment, and he actually showed us the legendary Geno Moore porn tape and stuff. And, but Dennis was always like, Dennis was one of the, when I started going to indie shows, I was kind of smart to the business. Like I was reading the newsletters, but I never really firsthand witnessed behind the scenes. And Dennis used to knew that I would send the results into Meltzer and to I would usually send the reports in to the other guy, Wade Keller.
Right.
So Dennis would actually when I would get to a building, after he saw me multiple times, he knew what I was doing. He would actually let me go in before the fans. And I would buy my ticket. He would sell me a front row seat, or he'd sell me a general admission seat, but he'd set up an extra chair front row. And there was times when the house was good, he would just wouldn't even charge me, just let me go in. And then that's how I got to meet Ace Starley, Harley Lewis, Devin Storm, Billy Kidman, all those guys, King Kalua, Brandy, they were all there. So, but it was weird because it was the first time I would actually get to see there's Supernova hanging with Donnie B, and then realizing that they're brothers,
right?
And they're feuding with each other, but there they are sitting there. So it was kind of the first time of actually witnessing what it was like.
Right.
And back then, the guys didn't really work out in the ring, but they would be sitting there, going over their matches.
Yep.
But yeah, Dennis was always good to me. Like I said, I saw some good stuff with Dennis and bad stuff. We've all heard probably the stories.
Yeah. Some things here and there.
I used to go to a lot of
and both. Good
yeah.
and bad. Not all just Dennis was a jerk.
Yeah, but he was always good to me, so I could never say anything bad about that. Like I said, he was always good to me as just being a fan. We actually taped some of his shows later on. With Smart Mark Video. Dino Sana, I used to go to a lot of his shows. It was the same thing. Dino was both me and the hat guy. He would let us go in before they opened the doors,
right? And
we would hang out with because a lot of back then Harley Lewis and Ace and all that. They would work a lot of the same promotions around. It wasn't all the indie talent you have now. A lot of it was the same guys, just worked different promotions.
Right.
So you got to know that they would recognize you from the different shows.
Yep.
So the one show I'll never forget, we were at the Downingtown Farmers Market, which is no longer there. And like I said, Dino used to let me and sound or hat guy go in, and then after they opened up the ticket, they started selling tickets to fans, we would go up and buy our ticket. Well, unbeknownst to me, the guy that owned the Downingtown Farmers Market saw me sitting there, and he knew I was in there beforehand, so he thought I was trying to sneak in. And him and me went at it, had words, and he was ready to ban me from the building and stuff. and Metal Maniac got involved and stuff. And finally, I think Dino came to my side and said he's okay. And but yeah, I used to go to all the Dinos, and Bay Ragney used to run back then. It was one of the Dudleys, Chubby Dudley. But I said there was some of the shows. I was at the show. I don't know if you remember Clementon, Larry Sharp, Abdul the Butcher worked with Abdul Singh, who was Balls Mahoney.
Right.
And Abdul Singh burned Abdul the Butcher. And I'll never forget that. I thought Abdul was going to kill him, man. Legit kill him. You could smell the flesh. And Abdul still has this big scar on his, but I was at that show that night. And like I said, you could smell the flesh burning, and I'll never forget, I know there was a show, Dennis used to run Woodbury, and I know he used to bring Chris Benoit in, so I have an autograph of he signed in Wild Pegasus, I think. But they did Lawler against Chris Benoit the one night. And so I mean there were some great shows back then. Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. The show was in driving distance, I would usually, so it was nothing back then. There were shows sometimes Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. I would hit
Right.
all of them. But then, like I said, once I got involved with Smart Mark Video and stuff, we did even more. But at that point, I was either getting paid or I didn't have to pay to go, so it was a lot cheaper. But
Hell yeah. You got anything else?
Well, one thing that does make me curious, because I mean, you said you were close with Dennis, and you were also an ECW fan. Was there any awkwardness after everything was Shane in the world title and Dennis getting screwed on that? Did that affect you at all, or was it kind of like I'm on the periphery?
Yeah, I mean, Dennis. I don't know how much. I know Dennis brought in. There was heat on. I don't know if you remember. Dennis brought Cornette in, and they did a Smoky Mountain show a couple blocks from the arena that I was at. And he drew like 100 some people. I know there was some heat there. I think more of it was Gino. I mean, Gino Moore. I know, like one night, I guess he like took air out of people's tires. And, like it was more Gino than I think it was Dennis. And what people don't realize too is that whole thing with Dennis. Even though Dennis got screwed, kind of got screwed. Yeah. I mean, supposedly when they did the interview or the angle, like they had to do all these takes. Yeah. So I mean, he kind of like. I think went along, like, even though. Yeah,
it was kind of explaining to me that, like, yes, and Paul tells the story, and when Paul tells the story, he was take it with, Lisa Bagasol. I know the way Paul sells it and the way Todd says he sold it too was they told Dennis, oh no, this is all going to be an angle.
Yeah.
We didn't tell you because Todd said he was sitting next to Dennis. And Dennis was getting real upset during the promo, and Doug was physically throwing the belt.
Yep.
That he kept sitting there, like, biting his nail and going, he's pissing on the belt. He's pissing on the belt.
Yeah.
And Todd and Paul apparently sat him down and was like, no, this is going to be an angle. We didn't tell you about it because we wanted to get your genuine reaction so that you could be, pissed on camera and all that. But it's going to work out. We're going to do talent trading. It's going to be fine. We're going to turn it into this whole ECW, NWA war. So it seemed like they got him on board on the night, and then he found out afterwards, like, oh, these motherfuckers planned to die.
I think it was more. I think Dennis tried to make like ECW. I think like Paul Eek didn't really care like with Dennis. Like to me, Dennis wasn't really much to Paul Eek. Like Dennis kind of I think tried to build himself up more by making it sound like there was more and more heat than there really was. But yeah, that night when it was the belt, I mean, that was crazy. Just watching it. And, every time, like every so often, somebody will put up on Facebook or something, I'll watch it. I'm just like, it's crazy.
It's insane.
It's a shoot. Yeah, it's a modern.
I know Dennis supposedly. I guess Dennis when they did the NWA tournament, I think Dennis was afraid like Eddie Gilbert was going to go and show up at the arena with the belt. With the NWA belt and stuff, and I think that's why they didn't put it on. Like put on Candido or something. I forget, but I think they were afraid like Eddie was gonna do a double cross or something.
Yeah, I think they did put it on Candido afterwards.
Yeah.
So this is. I thought of another one. This isn't my last question. I got two. All right, my first one is fill in the blank. The greatest wrestling match of all time is, and it's strictly opinion, because your opinion is not my opinion, it's not everybody else's general opinion.
Just for personal reasons, mine was the night Tommy Dreamer won the title, the ECW title.
Yes.
I mean, it wasn't much of a match, but I think it only went like 5 minutes or something. But I mean, Tommy Dreamer like was always like. I got to know him a lot. Like I said, we used to set up the buildings and stuff, so we got to be around him a lot. And I've always, when I started doing the ring announcing and the commentating, I always try to remember how Tommy used to treat everybody and like everything. Like even having my hairstyle, my goatee, like it was all kind of patterned off of Tommy. And I always kind of like, try to be like, because Tommy's one of those guys, like everybody, like he could show up on any. There's been times I think where he's been on WWE the same week. He'll be at WWE, TNA. Yep. Like he's one of those guys that he always has an open door for Tom.
He's got good relations with everybody.
Yes, and so I always try to be like because with the wrestling, it's true though. Everything gets back to everybody. Like you always have to watch what you say because you might not. This person knows this person that knows that person.
Yeah, so when
that
Brickhouse
knows-
watches this earlier, he's going to hear you bad mouthing him, Keith. That was Keith, not me.
Yeah, everybody hears, like everybody somehow knows everybody. So
My final question, sir, is
Telegraph.
my final question is, sir, why the Carolina Panthers?
when they officially came in the league in '95, I guess it was.
They did.
Around '93, '94 when the NFL was starting to
Expand.
Mm-hmm. I was always a big fan of the NWA and the Four Horsemen. And,
there you go.
And Charlotte, I knew, was one of the towns that Ric Flair played a small part, but he was one of, like, they had a lot of, like, celebrities from Charlotte that were involved in sports, and Ric Flair was one of them. So I always thought, it'd be cool that, have a franchise in Charlotte. And then when they got the franchise, everybody knew it was going to be the Panthers, but nobody, like, knew what the jersey was going to be like. And I was at a thrift store or something, and there was like a generic Carolina Panther jersey. So I picked it up, and I started wearing it at the arena, and all the ECW shows, and people just started calling me, Carolina and stuff like that. And at the time, I was a big Penn State fan, and Curry Collins ended up getting drafted, and I was a big Curry Collins fan, so I found out how much of a prick he was. I ended up actually working.
Good football player, though.
Yeah, one of my old jobs, I used to work in the accounting department, and one of the guys that worked with me went to Penn State with him, and he used to tell, like, stories about what a jerk he was.
Right.
But it just seemed like everything fell into place. Like, they drafted Collins. I know Reggie White came to the team, and it just, I don't know, it just seemed like everything. Like, I'll still root for the Eagles, all 4 Philly sport teams.
Yeah.
But when it comes to, like, if the Panthers play the Eagles, I root for the Panthers. Like, when the Panthers, the last time they went to the Super Bowl, I think, if I remember,
it was the NFC Championship. They beat the Eagles in the NFC Championship.
Yeah, I was rooting for the Panthers, but otherwise, I'm still, like, Ron Jaworski's still my favorite football player and stuff like that. But I've always.
I took my wife to her first ever NFL game last year, or no, 2 years ago rather, and it was against it was 2019 because it was before the pandemic. So it was 2019, and a buddy of ours is a Panthers fan, and the Jets were playing the Panthers, and my wife's a Jets fan.
Okay.
So we went down to that game, and Cam Newton was still playing for the Panthers, and Jets damn near beat him. It was so close, and it was neat being in between those two because he's going nuts when the Panthers scored, and she's going nuts when the Jets scored. It was pretty fun, but I had to ask Carolina Jim why he's Carolina.
Yeah,
Jim.
I know people think I'm from there.
They know you though. They know you as Carolina Jim now.
I've never been there. I like to go sometimes to Charlotte just to see the stadium.
There you go.
I know Blue Meanie used to always, like, tell me, like, he'd be watching, like, when the WWF and all would have the TV tapings. Sometimes I'd be on camera, and like, the next time I would see him, he would be like, I saw you on TV there. I saw you in that damn, Panthers jersey, and the last night or the night before the show before the Dudleys left the first time, and I don't think this ever aired. They did it, like, off camera, but the Dudleys kind of did, like, a little bit of a shoot on different fans around the arena, like Cat Guy and stuff.
Sure.
So Bubba Ray's going around everybody, and me and Bubba never, like, a couple times I would interact, like, we used to see him at the strip club and stuff.
Yeah.
Him and Big Dick Dudley were not the friendliest of people. Like, Devon's, like, the complete opposite.
Right.
The nicest guy.
Right.
But anyway.
I've never heard.
Well, one time I was with Bubba outside, like, standing outside of one of the buildings, and he's like, signing autographs, and it was when he was doing his stuttering gimmick. So he's, like, in character to, like,
stuttering his autograph.
Like, yeah. And I made some smart ass comment, and he looked at me, and I thought I was going to kill me. But anyway, he's going around to different fans. Then he points to me. He's like, you. He's like, every goddamn show, you're always wearing that same goddamn. So he wasn't using. He was like using more colorful language.
Yeah.
But you were always wearing that goddamn shirt or jersey.
Yeah.
He's like, change that mother effing shirt, and the crowd's going crazy, and I'm like, really?
Yeah, thanks, man.
But yeah, it was pretty cool that he would he pointed me out. Like at least somebody, knows that I'm in the, sitting here.
Hell yeah, it's Carolina Jim. So we ended the interview with Dog Nation by we do this sometimes. We don't do this all the time, but we ended the interview with Dog Nation with saying if they wanted to ask us anything, what would it be? And of course, Sage Matthews says, "Why is Dog Nation your favorite tag team?" That's what he said to me. That's what he said. I forget what my answer was, Keith, but I said you're not like my favorite, top 5, but not favorite. But I mean, if there's anything that you would ever want to ask us, like we're gonna flip the script and you can ask us anything, or you can tell me to F myself and we end the interview.
You mentioned you were like with the grew up with the wrestling in the 80s and stuff. Were you one of these people that would with the tape trading and stuff back then in the 90s?
Well, what happened with me was my stepfather took me to the Ag Hall in Allentown a lot whenever they were taping or whenever they were doing Superstars or whatever, and we'd bounce back and forth between Ag Hall and Hamburg because he knew I liked it. He hated it. He couldn't stand wrestling, but he took me because it was something that we did together.
Yeah.
Because he took my brother to Jet. Right, but he took my brother to like Jets games. So to compensate for that, he took me to wrestling because he knew I liked it. So my first that I can remember, they were taping a bunch of Superstars of Wrestlings back to back, and then they would offer us a main event at the end. And the main event that particular day was Hulk Hogan teaming up with Andre the Giant. He had just won the title. This is 1984.
Yeah.
I'm 8 years old. So he had just won the title from Sheik. And so it was a couple months after that. And they took it was Hogan and Andre versus Stud and Bundy. And so I was in like the 5th row. And so they let all the kids run down to the aisle when they came down. So I got to touch Andre as he went by. Hogan, I high-fived him when he went by. I could not believe, and I'm 8 years old. I'll never forget how big Andre the Giant was when he walked by, right? Well, that particular day, they taped to Piper's Pit where he had Snuka on, and he smashed him in the head with a coconut.
Okay.
I was 50 feet from that event. That made me fall in love with this business because I didn't know at the time what, to me, it was all spectacle. It was all, when you're a kid, it's what it is. These guys are awesome. They're big. They're very, they're athletes. They're kicking the crap out of each other. It's great. Well, I loved it before then, but that moment not only solidified me like, this is awesome, but also I've always rooted for the heels. I always root for the heels in wrestling. I root for the heels in movies. Like, I root for the heels because of that moment. Like, I was like, I want to be Roddy Piper. All right. That was my moment.
Yeah.
Keith's moment's a little different. Keith, you want to tell him that?
Yeah, mine was, I was aware of it. My brother was a fan before I was. And one day he had it on and the funeral parlor came on. And I'm just kind of walking through the room or whatever, and I see Paul Bearer with, the high voice and the creepiness and all that. I'm like, this is different, right? And the Ultimate Warrior's on, and I knew Warrior from Mania 6, wrestling Hogan and all that stuff, and I would kind of root for Warrior because he was in, he looked like a superhero and he was wrestling Hogan. It pissed my brother off being a giant Hogan mark to root against Hogan. So I'd be like, anybody who's wrestling Hogan is fine by me. And so Warrior's out there and he's talking, and I kind of stop and I'm like, this is interesting. I've always liked horror. I've always liked the spooky stuff. So this is kind of up my alley. But we'll see what happens. So it's going on, and this big motherfucker comes out of the coffin casket. And I'm like, who is that guy? And then he starts beating on Warrior, and they throw him in this casket that's specially made for him, and they get him in there and they lock it. What just happened? Who are these people? What is going on here? He's like, well, that's Paul Bearer and that's the Undertaker. Is that Undertaker guy around a lot? Yeah, not as much as some people, but he's pretty regular. I'll watch that.
Yep.
I'll watch that right there. I want to see what happens next with that.
So Keith's moment was 30 years ago, and mine was, 40 years ago almost. Crazy.
It was crazy to watch the last ride. Taker said that segment, that very segment was when it was like I knew it was working. The character was there, and it kind of come into its own. Wow, that's cool.
I see there's a big push that they're trying to, that a lot of fans want to see the Undertaker as being the only guy getting.
Yes,
I'm definitely
he
on that
agrees on that.
bandwagon.
He's on that bandwagon.
Which to me, I mean, they're kind of late. I think, like, usually by now you would think there's more.
It would be a respectful thing to
There's
do
more
because the
now.
only other guy they ever did that to was Andre because he was the
Yeah.
first one, and so it would be cool to have a night where you just kind of celebrate him, and instead of having one person tell stories, have like a dozen or like,
Yeah.
or if not a dozen, but maybe 5 or 10.
Before the Hall of Fame like got to be what it is now. I think it was 1995. They did one in Philly,
Mhm.
and it was just what they did was it was like a dinner,
Yeah.
and we all got to we paid our money and
You got to eat with the
we
wrestlers.
eat with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was. I think that year like George Steele went in.
I was at that Mania, but I wasn't at the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, George Steele. I think
Mania
went in.
15, I think.
Might have been. I was sitting nosebleed at the Mania.
I was there.
Yeah, I was sitting
I had a big
nosebleed.
sign. I went with 10 people. And we had this big sign that we hung over the banister that said, because the Eagles sucked that year. So it said Austin 316, Eagles nothing. And they made us take it down like about, I don't know, 10 minutes into the
Yeah.
pay-per-view.
I think it was like Moolah, George Steele.
Yeah.
But I ended up sitting. It was funny. Like I didn't even think about dressing up. Like some people were dressed up like really, like the wrestlers were all dressed up. Like some of the fans were dressed up. Some were just wearing. So I was wearing at the time. Terry Funk had done the thing with and Sandman with the red white
Right.
flag pants.
Yeah.
I'm wearing the flag pants. I'm wearing a Lawrence Taylor shirt from WrestleMania, and of course, Bam Bam Bigelow ends up being the one I'm sitting with.
Right.
So he's giving me crap like he was jokingly, but he was giving me crap the whole night
That's
that I'm wearing
funny.
this
That's
because we didn't
funny.
know ahead of time like who
You
were
can't
gonna.
buy that.
But it was cool because it was like it was me. I was at Bigelow's table, and then I think Triple H was at the table next to us,
Cool.
and then Jarrett and Road Dogg,
Right.
and I mean it was great. But like I said, back from when it went from there to like doing these big arenas, it's crazy how much it's blown up.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get out of here on that note. This is Carolina Jim. This is Around the Turnbuckle. Stay tuned tonight because I'm going to be releasing this tomorrow morning. So stay tuned tonight. Keith and I will be live once again at 6 o'clock where our guest will be Alexander. This is Carolina Jim. We're live down in Quakertown. If you're around, come on down.
You think you know me?
Oh, yeah. If you smile.